There are places on Earth that are so vast they still impress upon us the power of nature. The immense, rugged and varied terrain of Canada never fails to astound me. This is a record of my journey across this magnificent land and back into its history. A history written by explorers who should be household names in their native Britain, but are as unknown as the land they encountered. Canada is a country that was built on the skills of the land, traditional bushcraft, understanding nature and survival in the harshest of environments.
This isn't a survival series. It's about how those skills and that knowledge were used to do something quite different, something remarkable, to explore a country.
And in Canada's Arctic north, there's one explorer whose name stands out, John Rae. This is St Magnus Cathedral in Kirkwall in the Orkney Isles. I've come here because of a man that I consider should be one of our country's most celebrated figures, a Scotsman born nearby in 1813 and buried here in 1893.
This is the memorial to Dr. John Rae, a medical doctor who, in my opinion, was the greatest Arctic explorer ever.
This is the man who succeeded where so many had failed, the man who found the final link in the Holy Grail of 19th century exploration, the Northwest Passage.
And yet, while other lesser explorers were being given medals and knighthoods, Rae was shunned by society, and even today his achievements go largely unrecognised.
It's time to set the record straight. Time for me to explore the life of an unsung British hero. This is the Hall of Clestrain on Orkney. This was the birthplace of John Rae, and it's really important to come here to get a sense of the man. It's hard to imagine today that this building would once have been an incredible Georgian structure, very impressive. But you can see how the weather over the centuries has really taken its toll. And that weather is actually a part of the story of John Rae, because he was an Orcadian born and bred. It was across these hills that he used to stride at great speed to shoot grouse. And through the sounds here, he used to race boats, developing boating skills that in later years he'd be celebrated for. But perhaps the most important thing was the spirit of the place. See, Orcadians are islanders. They're exposed to the whims of nature, and they have to deal with that with a degree of stoicism. And that stoicism is something that Rae took with him to Canada and recognised in the native people he learned to travel with and to trust. These qualities were not lost on the Hudson's Bay Company, the British fur trade company that owned and ruled much of Canada. This was the place their ships came to recruit as they filled up from the last available fresh water on the route from London to their bases on the shores of Hudson's Bay in Canada.
This is Logan's Well. It's a very historic place. Still see plenty of clear water in here today. This is where the Hudson's Bay Company ships used to fill up from. Men would come ashore and they'd fill the tanks from here. It's a very special place. It wasn't just the Hudson's Bay Company that stopped here.
a lot of very famous ships, including Captain Cook. Both the Resolution and the Discovery stopped here to fill their tanks. It's amazing. This fixed point on the journey from London to Canada created a special link between the Hudson's Bay Company and Orcadians. Jeanette Park is curator at the Stromness Museum in Orkney.
Tell me about the history of the Hudson's Bay Company and Orkney.
It's got a very strong connection to Orkney. Quite a lot of the workforce was recruited in Stromness. John Rae's dad was actually a recruiting officer, and a lot of the young men that were brought up in Orkney, it was big families. It was a family croft, and the eldest son would inherit the croft, and the other sons in the family would have to go off and make their own way in the world. And a good way of doing that was signing on for a term of employment with the Hudson Bay, and if you did a 7-year stretch out there, you would earn enough money to come back and maybe buy your own piece of land and marry and settle down and set up. So it was a good way to better yourself, to come to achieve a better standard of living when you came home.
Provided a great opportunity.
Oh, it did, yeah, it did. It was taken up by a lot of men.
And what do you think were the qualities amongst the Orcadians that the Hudson's Bay Company recognised and liked?
Well, I think a lot of the Orkney men that went there were, I think it's been quoted as being of a sober disposition and hard-working, and probably kept in mind quite a lot why they were there and what they were doing.
Orkney is actually further north than Churchill, the company's main base in Canada. It's said that Orcadians often remarked, only half-jokingly, that they travelled to Churchill for the warmth. After qualifying as a doctor, Rae, like so many Orcadians before him, joined the Hudson's Bay Company. But his was to be no ordinary career. Although he made his name in the Arctic, that success was built on foundations laid down in his early years, working as a doctor further south in the woods of Canada. His work involved tending to both the European and the Indian employees of the company, and he travelled with an open mind. When John Rae came here, he saw the wisdom that existed in the life skills of the people he encountered, the indigenous populations of Canada. And he went to great efforts, not to just buy from them the tools that he needed. He learned from them how to employ those techniques, how to make repairs, and how to make the tools himself, so that he became just as skillful as they were. And this was one of the keys to his success as an explorer. This is the Canadian winter. The only way for Rae to reach his patients was by snowshoe. Like so many things in his life, he quickly mastered the technique. There are stories of him walking half the night just to catch up with the postman because he'd forgotten to post a letter. He became so proficient that he even made his own snowshoes to cope with a variety of environments and conditions that he encountered. There's no doubting his commitment to life here. He clearly respected the craft skills of the locals. I'd like to learn more, so I'm going to spend a couple of days making a close replica of Rae's snowshoes with Pinnock Smith, an Algonquin craftsman who I worked with a few years ago. We start with an ash log. Here we go again, Pinnock. Splitting. All your projects start like this, don't they?
That's the easiest way to do it. That's the route I'll take.
It's good to be working with you again. That's going real sweet.
Open it up.
Yep. Now, the last time I worked with Pinnock, we built a birch bark canoe together, and it took a lot longer than anticipated to film everything and do it. So on this occasion, I've asked him to come prepared. And this is what you've brought with you. So that's an 1/8. Yep. And then that's been split again, taken down to produce this, which is really the point at which all the work starts, isn't it?
Yeah, now we'll start using our crooked knife to shape the sort of size we want and everything.
Yeah. The first thing is we're going to taper the ends, is that right?
Yeah, we want to taper this off so when we put the two of them together, we'll come to about that width there.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But we don't want to taper it off just an extreme taper. We like it to come gradually.
Yeah, gradually. Yeah.
So that
to about half the thickness.
Yeah, when we put it together, we don't have this thing. It has a tendency to crack off sometimes because when we open it up, it'll crack. So we'll carve that down a bit.
This was the world Rae embraced. A world without tape measures, where everything's judged by eye. But it's no less precise.
Mine's a little thick yet.
Yeah.
This is how Rae learnt to live here, by working with the craftsmen that surrounded him.
I reckon that's the second taper done on mine. Looks right, doesn't it?
That's good. We'll get away with that.
Yeah.
Tie it together, laminate it.
Got a whiskey jack there.
Better feed your bird there.
Got a little bit. Yeah. They're funny, aren't they?
In the back.
Come on. Come on.
Back.
You know you want it.
The locals say it's good luck to feed the whiskey jack. It means they'll clear up the camp for you after you leave.
My hands are getting a bit cold now. Yeah, it's a bit windy, isn't it? I'll put the shavings on the fire.
Since I was a child, I've always loved the smell of burning ash. It's almost as rewarding as the carving itself. With conditions worsening and a temperature of -34, it's time to go inside. I want these snowshoes to be as close to Rae's as possible. On this trip, I want to know what it feels like to literally walk in his snowshoes. I sent Pinnock a picture with the dimensions of Rae's snowshoes, but when you're working like this, inevitably every pair is different.
Very lightweight and very hard, so it makes a very good snowshoe.
That should be a better fit. Flatten this one down, it wasn't so flat. Okay. Let's have a look. You happy with that?
That's the frame ready. This temporary brace is set at roughly the same width as Rae's. Next, we bind them with rawhide, untanned animal skin.
Yep. Then we want to close this about here. Keep it.
Yep.
Tie it.
I think we can tie that.
Hold it.
Why are you using rawhide?
It's because as it dries, it's going to start tightening up more, and it'll hold it together for us.
Yep.
And it's also something we already have convenient because we'll be using a lot of it for all the lacing and stuff.
Traditional material from the
we're not going to go out and buy the twine to do it. We have it here anyway. So.
Rae's snowshoe design incorporated a distinctive curve at the front to stop them sticking in the snow. To achieve this, in the time we've got available, we're going to laminate the wood. That means splitting it so that it will take the curve more easily. Rae's would have been soaked and steamed over several days.
Okay, now we can try bending it around.
Yeah, that looks a lot better, doesn't it? Oh, yeah.
It's a little tight, huh? Notice I gave you all the hard work, huh?
That's all right. I don't mind.
Younger person.
Wow, look at that.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it looks all right, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's very good.
And of course, now we have to twin this up with another one, don't we? But you've already prepared some earlier, haven't you?
Because you complained about last time.
That's not true. Okay, well, show me the next step. Right. So you've got two frames, and you've spread them up here, haven't you?
Well, this here is just to hold these two together when you bend it, so you don't want to bend any to come down any further.
That's like a clamp, a primitive clamp.
Just to hold these two together.
Yep.
And these gauges here and our clamps and everything, I've never seen anybody keep them. They're thrown out, they're burnt or whatever. Because every time we make snowshoes, there'll be always different size anyway, so we end up throwing them out.
You know that's because you're not standardised, Pinnock.
Oh yeah, it's just you that thinks like that.
With the basic frame complete, we can remove the brace and fit the cross pieces.
And this piece here we'll put up about 2/3 of the way. It's just for balance of the shoe. Does that look like 2/3 to you? Because remember, it's all eyeball.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not bad.
Okay, you can scribe that on the inside there.
Rae was not a man to compromise on quality, so he used 5 cross pieces for strength and durability.
If this first one is in the wrong place, the snowshoes simply won't work properly. So obviously, if there's the snowshoe, as you lift your foot, it needs to tip so that the nose comes out and doesn't dig into the snow. Rae's snowshoes were so effective, he became known as a glucker, he who takes long strides. His most incredible feat was to walk 1,200 miles across the winter forest in just 2 months to meet a man who could teach him how to survey. The transformation from doctor to explorer had already begun. The more you put into this way of life, the more rewarding it becomes. I've rounded off the edges of these crossbars, and the reason for that is when the snowshoe's laced up, the rawhide lacing will pass around this. I don't want any sharp edges that could cause it to wear through. They're looking quite good. Again, it just shows you how versatile a crooked knife is. Crooked knives comes in all different shapes of bend in the end there. This is particularly good for doing spoons and cups. And that curved part enables you to put a nice round shape onto the wood. It's a really versatile tool. Rae knew that the knowledge of how to do things was the key to life here. That's what I like about Pinnock. With a couple of tools, he can make whatever he needs, working steadily, day after day. Well, it's been a very satisfying day. I really enjoy this sort of craft work. One of the things I find really interesting about working with Pinnock, who has the benefit of an Algonquin Indian heritage, is that the way he makes snowshoes is very simple. A lot of people would make a snowshoe like this on a complex jig, which is kind of a more modern approach to making them. His is the way of the forest, where you make very simple clamps from little sticks as you go. And it makes me think of John Rae as well, because this is very much what he encountered when he was here in Canada. In John Rae's time, women wove the hide, or babiche, for his snowshoes. Today, Pinnock does the whole thing.
Normally we'll just start in the middle, any place. Doesn't matter which hole you're going to start with here. Go in, pull it through. As soon as we get it started here, what we want to do is come across again. We want to this hole here.
The pace of this work is really helping me to connect to the world Rae lived in. I think I ought to start one.
Go up to the end.
Up to the end.
Push them down right through. This one you have to bring your string over.
Which way do I pull out with that one?
On this side. Then you go in from the top, down here, through here. That's the one. Down there. Up again, and then back up again. Yep, that's it. Now again, over, under this one. Again, over these, under this one. Under that one. Under this one here as well.
Don't worry, I'm getting lost too. Now let me see if I can figure this out, because this is the tricky bit.
Yep.
So, so now I guess it's going over one, under one, over one, like before, is it? Because that's all we've got left.
But we want to stay on this side.
Stay on this side here.
So you're going to pick up that.
I go in there.
Yeah.
There?
That's it, yeah.
There.
And then you come right back out beside it. Right in front of it, like, yeah, right there.
There.
Yeah. And go right back down again. You got to pick up next
there?
one. No, this one.
This one?
Right there, right beside it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
right back
that one.
Yeah. Go right back down again.
And that one.
Uh-huh. And come out near the hole there.
It's a tricky business. My appreciation of the skill involved is growing with every stitch. I've watched an old Indian woman make the most amazing pair of snowshoes, and I watched her hands go like a sewing machine, and it's so skillful. I mean, it's simple, but there are lots of mistakes you can make, aren't there?
Very easy to make a mistake.
I mean, I'm going dizzy doing this, I have to say.
No, right.
Well, anyway, not bad for a first attempt. Not bad for a novice, but admittedly nowhere near as good as Pinnock's. It takes him most of the day to complete the webbing. Rae used an incredibly fine weave. His shoes were designed for speed and they were built to last. Rae was obviously a man who was keen to go places. So these are the finished snowshoes, and you can see how beautiful that pattern of babiche, the rawhide here is. And as that dries, it shrinks a little bit, tightens it all up, pulls it together. It sounds like a tennis racket now. And just one job remains, and that's to put the binding on. So this is the moment of truth, trying the snowshoes. When the bindings are new, they're a little bit more fiddly. Once you've used them for a while, they settle down and they are very easy then to put on. You push your toe through till it's around your heel. And then you can angle your toe in. Now as I use them, they will stretch, but they'll also settle down. Once the bindings settle down, you can put them on and off without even having to use your hands. Let's try them out. They're very good. Very light. It's like walking on two feathers in the snow. John Rae is quoted as saying, "A long day's march on snowshoes is about the finest exercise a man can take." When he wasn't working, he would be out using his snowshoes, learning how to hunt everything from grouse to caribou. But this wasn't just a pastime. Perhaps the most important thing about John Rae as an explorer, certainly in my mind, was his ability to truly take care of himself on the land. A lot of other explorers relied upon Indian guides, local guides, to help them to find food. But Rae took a pride in being able to find food for himself and live off the country. And it's interesting, this is his gun. It's not known whether he carried this on his expeditions, but he certainly used it in later life. And it tells me something about the man. It's a plain gun, but of good quality. And it's very light and wieldy. It's exactly the sort of thing that you would want to carry with you on that sort of expedition. It was his strength, his self-reliance, and his clarity of purpose that meant in 1845 John Rae was chosen by the Hudson's Bay Company to lead an expedition to search for the Northwest Passage by filling in the last blanks on the maps of the northern coast. He was headed for the Arctic.
I have to confess that as a woodsman, this landscape makes me feel rather exposed. And it must have been the same for John Rae. He learned his skills of travelling in the Northland in amongst the trees and the forests with the forest Indians. And now he is in this landscape where instead of trees is ice and there's snow.
Canada's Arctic coast was becoming an obsession. The Northwest Passage could revolutionise sea trade to the Far East. A route across the top of Canada offered an alternative to the otherwise hazardous journey through French and Spanish waters. By the mid-19th century, much of the route had been mapped, but this far north the sea freezes for months, and every attempt to complete the passage had come up against immovable sea ice. The Royal Navy were determined to complete the task, but the search is incorporated in the Hudson's Bay Company Charter. They had John Rae marked as their best hope. His would be the first Arctic overland attempt to solve the riddle. At the time, the Arctic mainland was an unknown entity. Rae and his men were the first Europeans ever to spend a winter here. Their survey, filling in the blanks on the map, brought them here to a place they called Pelly Bay. To explore the world Rae encountered, I'm going to be working here with members of the Canadian Rangers, the Canadian Army's eyes and ears in the north. Rae was on foot, hauling a sledge, but this is the way to travel today.
But
many people, these are playthings, but they're just the tractors of the north, and after a few hours travelling on one through -30, that's exactly what they feel like. From the outset, Rae was different. He travelled to the Arctic with only a few months of supplies, even though he intended to stay over a year. He was going to live off the land, just like the people up here. Ranger Liedrich is going to be my interpreter. We're out on the frozen sea ice that proves such a barrier to ship-based expeditions.
Cold day today.
Yeah, windy.
Very windy. We're lucky here in the lee of this island.
Yeah.
But out there, that's not easy travelling, is it?
No, it's not.
And you guys get cold like everyone else, don't you?
Yes, we do.
I've brought warming tea. Liedrich's providing the snack, frozen char.
Well, a lot of people think that this make you cold, but it doesn't, does it?
No, when you first eat it, it was cold, but maybe half an hour later you start to get warm.
It's lovely. Beautiful. But tell me about your traditional fishing spear.
Our traditional ones, we use this one. It's called kakivak.
Mm-hmm.
And you make a hole in fall time. You make a hole and just put that in a hole like that.
Yep.
And we wait for the fish to go by.
Yep.
And that's,
And you spear them.
yeah.
And of course, you're using some modern materials here,
Yeah.
some electrical tape and things to make it, but this isn't, is it? What's that there?
That's a muskox horn.
Muskox horn.
Yes.
And that's still better than modern materials.
Yes.
And does it have that shape naturally? Or have you carved that shape?
Have to carve it like that.
Yeah.
They carve it like that.
It's not so long ago that the people here relied on their traditional skills. This archive film is from the 1960s and shows a way of life that had hardly changed from the world Rae would have encountered. In winter and in summer, caribou are essential to life here. They provide food, clothing and tools. John Rae relied on them too. In the autumn, when much of the snow has melted, the kakivak spear comes into its own on these weirs. Knowing how to find food all year round was knowledge that was crucial to Rae's expeditions.
This landscape has to be one of the hardest places to come and make a documentary. As I tell you, just standing here talking to you, my face is absolutely freezing. It's actually quite a warm day as the Arctic goes. It's only -24. A few days ago in the forest, I was in -40. But with the wind, it's a completely different ball game, and exposed flesh is very, very vulnerable to cold injuries. Rae knew that, and he knew that one of the most important things here was learning how to find or make shelter. And he implored all of the people who went on expeditions with him to learn how to do things the local way, and that meant the snow house or igloo.
Levy, an elder here, is using his harpoon to test the snow.
Because when you look at it, you just seem to see this go in, but actually what he's feeling for, the top is soft, and then there's a layer of harder snow underneath. And now what they're doing is they're removing the top soft snow, because that's no good for igloo building.
But building an igloo isn't always straightforward, and this snow is too crumbly.
He doesn't like the snow.
He doesn't like the snow.
No.
The vagaries of snow are such that just 100 yards away we find the perfect conditions.
It's 13 years since I last had a go at building an igloo, so can expect to be quite a bit rusty, I think. And I've just been shown a tip. If I score a groove in both sides of the snow block, you can get hold of it easier. Like that. They're quite heavy. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm
Good. Good?
Yeah.
Ah, the foreman says that's good.
You him not. The first block will be that one.
This is going to be the first block.
Yeah, one of the other.
When Rae first arrived in the Arctic, he fell back on Orcadian traditions, building a hut out of stone. He didn't know any better, but it was the wrong technology in the wrong place. When Rae saw the insulation an igloo provides, he quickly made it his business to learn how to make them. Piece by piece, he was acquiring the skills needed for life this far north.
There first.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a look. I'm remembering the blocks have to stick in three places. Up here, down here and down there. Those 3 points of contact. And then they stick together. And that's the tool that's used. The snow knife. It's just a butcher's knife and they've fitted their own handle. This handle's a fantastic shape because you could hold it with mitts like that. You can use 2 hands with it or you can use 1 hand as well. And this is the most important tool. You know, in the jungle it's a machete, in the high Arctic, no Inuit leaves home without his snow knife. It's the most important thing. They can break through the ice with this, make an igloo with it, they can cut up their meat with it. It's brilliant. That's that lovely sound.
You should try and make it same as the next block all the time. And try and
Yeah.
make it.
Okay. Yep.
That way it's easier to work on.
That's easier said than done. The other 2 blocks I did went in so easily.
What am I doing wrong? Not quite right. You show me what I've done wrong. He's looking on disapprovingly. Yeah. Okay.
When I watch Levy, I see a lifetime of experience and skill shaping every block.
Just like that. You've done this before? Watching the master at work now. Good to have a go, watch a little bit, have another go. You get better all the time. As the wall starts to go up, We're already now getting that windbreak effect, which is very welcome today. It's incredible. This is the bit that always astonishes me. It looks like it defies belief, doesn't it? Very, very clever how it all locks together. But the igloo, to me, is one of the most incredible marvels of human achievement. There are a few things that, if I had a time machine, I'd like to go back and see. One is the first man to make fire by friction, and the other is the first Inuit who mastered this complicated technique of building. It's incredibly clever.
Yes, that is our steam. It shows just how much insulation these structures provide. Rae is on record as choosing to sleep alone in his igloo. It may have been colder, but he couldn't bear the smoke of his crew's pipes. He kept his books and ink in his sleeping bag to stop them from freezing. He was some man. It's been a real insight to get a masterclass from someone as talented as Levy.
Levy, for me, it's been a real privilege to be here and see you at work in this environment. And there's only one thing I really can say, and that's Koisanami. Tell him I'm very glad I was able to teach him everything about the Arctic. If he ever needs me to come back, I'm happy. Yes, definitely, and I'm very grateful for his kind offer of his snowmobile, his kamiks, his parka. I will take very good care of these things when I take them back to England with me. Thank you.
I tell you what, you give me your fancy clothes and I'll happily give you my old ones.
Using the snow to build their homes and finding food from the land were key to Rae's ability to travel up here. He was working with the elements, not against them. The people Rae met were not just surviving. He experienced the land with a rich culture, a culture that continues to evolve and that I'm being treated to today. This throat singing reminds me of singing I've heard in Mongolia. It seems very similar. Very good. Is there a song, a rhythm that you're following, or is one of you trying to catch the other one, or?
No, it's kind of file.
You're leading, and then you've got to keep up.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm right. I'm listing out now. But it sounds like there's more than two of you in here. It sounds like there are 3 or 4 people in here. It's amazing. And how do you make that? You've got 2 sounds, haven't you? Because you're making a musical sound, and then there's that throat sound. Can I hear just one of you? I don't think I'd be any good at this at all. But it's very good. It's fantastic. It's a very strange sound, but it kind of belongs here in the north, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can I hear some more? Because I think it's great. Today, Pelly Bay is called Kugaruk. The people here are making sure the skills and knowledge continue. Once a week, elders visit the school. The kudlik is the traditional stove and heater for an igloo. Nets, of course, were and are vitally important for people who live on the coast. It's not all about survival, though. There are tricks to learn too. Wood is a relatively new resource in a land without trees. Inuit sledges were once made from frozen fish wrapped in skin with cross members of antler tied together with sealskin. This is a fabulous place. It's given me a glimpse into the kind of people and lifestyles Rae would have come across on his travels. They start them young here. Actually, this is a mother and toddler class, Inuit style. Sophie, can you tell me what are you teaching the young women?
I'm teaching them how to use this tool in order to make the skin softer.
I've worn caribou clothing and I know how good this is, but I think people who aren't used to it are surprised that you are still using these traditional methods.
Well, these clothes are the warmest you can get in the winter.
A fact that was not lost on Rae. And you don't tan the skin, you just soften the skin.
When you finish with the scraper, you rub warm water into the skin. Then you fold it, tie it with rope, and leave it for about 24 hours. Then you untie it, and it's beautifully soft.
When Rae adopted the snow house, he also adopted Inuit clothing. In fact, he'd been using local clothing for some time. And there's great wisdom in that because the two technologies go together. Here's some caribou clothing, and one of the secrets to the success of this clothing is that the skin side is close to your body and it's warm. And that means that your body perspiration can pass through it and it collects in the fur on the outside of the garment. Now, if you bring that into the main chamber of the igloo when it's heated, the frost melts and is drawn by capillary action up into the insulative underhair close to the skin. And when you go out again, it would freeze like ice. By leaving it in the porch, any moisture freezes in the outermost layer of the hair, which can simply be brushed away in the morning. It's fantastic. It's so simple and so effective. A completely windproof garment that breathes and is also insulative. Now, modern clothing just doesn't function like this. All of these garments we've got here, even if we were to bring them into the igloo overnight with the traditional lantern going in here, there's no way we can get this environment warm enough to dry our clothing and get the moisture out of them. That was one of the keys to his success. He had both bits of technology, insulative snow houses and the right clothing that worked with it. That meant he could go long distance without too much hardship. Caribou clothing was the final element that brought John Rae the freedom to explore where others feared to tread. Rae and his men completed their expedition, a 600-mile round trip. He may not have found the passage yet, but the blanks in the map were getting smaller and smaller. However, in 1845, the Royal Navy dispatched their own expedition by sea, led by Sir John Franklin. The competition to find the passage was hotting up.
When Rae left here, he'd already established his credentials as an Arctic explorer. It was then that he was to become involved with the folly of the Franklin expedition, an expedition that was to dog his career for the rest of his life. I find it irritating that I even have to mention Franklin's name in association with Rae's.
Sir John Franklin was a senior naval officer. He set sail with 2 ships, Erebus and Terror, equipped with everything so-called modern science could provide: steam power, strengthened hulls, even tinned food. With the full backing of the Royal Navy, this was the expedition that everyone expected to complete the search for the Northwest Passage. But Franklin was not a man who could adapt to conditions. He reflected the Victorian attitude of superiority. A ship with several years of supplies of tinned food had no need of local knowledge. But Franklin went missing, and a massive search for him began. At one point, it's estimated 15 ships and 500 men were looking for him. In fact, in 1848, Rae was ordered to join one such expedition, searching for Franklin by land. The land he was headed for is already familiar to me. It's the same area that Samuel Hearne explored in the previous century. I visited here, travelling in his footsteps. Hearne was another Hudson's Bay Company explorer. He pioneered the use of indigenous skills and knowledge for exploration. He recorded his experiences in a journal that Rae is likely to have read. I can't believe it's just coincidence that he employed exactly the same approach. This is Klingcho land, people both Hearne and Rae met on their journeys.
It's really nice to be back with the Klingcho in the winter, and they've really kindly set up this camp for us to be able to show us some of their traditional winter skills. We've come way out into the bush here, about halfway between the Great Slave Lake and Great Bear Lake, and it's about -20, something like that. It'll be a lot colder at night, and this is going to be our accommodation while we're out here. And there's a fantastic smell. I wish you could smell it. It's incredibly evocative, the smell of spruce wood coming from the wood burning stoves. It's a real sense of comfort in a harsh landscape. But it's only out here, once you get away from the communities, that all the traditional skills bubble to the surface, and you can see just how vibrant and alive some of the traditional knowledge still is.
Skills like trapping, making bannock and ice fishing. It's good to see the youngsters here too, a sign of a vibrant and healthy culture.
It feels quite cold here. It's that breeze, isn't it?
Oh, yes, quite cold, yeah.
And the ice sounds like glass. It's amazing.
That's what happens when it's -50, and that's without the wind chill. It's thought that early in Franklin's voyage, some men died from lead poisoning, from solder on their tinned food. Meanwhile, Rae could eat fish caught with nets under the ice. Maybe Franklin should have paid more attention to the local ways. There really is plenty of food out here if you know how to find it. And the fish preserves itself, freezing instantly. It's said that Franklin maintained English standards on his voyages. He dressed for dinner and dined off china plates. Rae led a very different life. And it's only after dark that the serious business begins. I wonder if John Rae was treated to such fine hospitality.
So I think I may have made the mistake of asking what you do for entertainment, because the mood has changed. Now, this is all a bit rough and ready, I have to say. We're in the crowded confinement of this tent. And you may see shadows from the sound recordist, and all sorts is going on because I've been invited to play in the traditional hands game competition. This is taken very seriously, and already the opposing team have got the look. They look like they're hunting caribou, and I feel like the caribou right now. But I've got Jared on my side, who's a champion, so I may be in good hands here. We'll see what goes on. Under no circumstances am I placing any bets, because people have lost their shirts playing this game. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like that laugh.
Don't ask me about the rules. As far as I can tell, it's something to do with which hand the stick is in. I've no idea who won, but at least I didn't lose my shirt. Of course, it goes on into the night. But Rae was just passing through. The search for Franklin meant he had to move on. Rae was on his way to the Coppermine River. From here, he could search the surrounding coast for signs of Franklin. Hearn witnessed a massacre here, and coincidentally, one of Rae's men drowned here too. He was the only person to die on a Rae expedition. An incredible achievement when cold and malnutrition were common causes of death on expeditions. But though Rae and his men spent years searching, they found no trace of Franklin. But there was still the Northwest Passage, and Rae had shown he was clearly the man for the job. 2 years later, he was sent back to Pelly Bay to carry on his work.
Make no mistakes about it, this is a really difficult place. If you're not born here, it takes an incredible degree of mental determination to be able to just cope with conditions here. This was Rae's 4th expedition into the north, and it was on this occasion that he was to make the most important discovery of his career, the piece of water that today bears his name, the Rae Strait. That was the missing link in the Northwest Passage.
The seemingly impossible task was complete, and thanks to his unique approach, Rae was the man who had achieved it. It was a small strip of water northwest of Pelly Bay, between the Boothia Peninsula and King William Island. The search was finally over. Rae should have been given a hero's welcome. But the achievement was immediately overshadowed. Almost at the moment of his greatest triumph, Inuit from Kugaruk brought word to Rae that they had found a party of dead English sailors. From relics traded with the Inuit, it was clear this was the Franklin expedition, and their end had not been a quiet one. They'd behaved in the only way they knew how, desperately hauling their boats overland, taking their supplies with them, but without knowledge of how to live in the land that surrounded them, they really hadn't a hope.
Rae couldn't believe it. On this expedition, he's found the Northwest Passage, he knows where the missing explorers have gone, and he heads back
to Britain to tell people what he's learned. You'd think they'd be happy, wouldn't you? Strange thing is, things didn't quite turn out that way. Armed with the knowledge that Franklin's expedition had perished, Rae returned to London. His Admiralty report sealed his fate. His report was reprinted in this edition of the Times, Monday, October the 23rd, 1854.
Intelligence, which may be fairly considered decisive, has at last reached this country of the sad fate of Sir John Franklin and his brave companions.
The article then reprints Rae's letter. This is the key passage. From the mutilated state of many of the corpses and the contents of the kettles, it is evident that our wretched countrymen had been driven to the last resource, cannibalism, as a means of prolonging existence. To suggest that members of the Royal Navy had resorted to cannibalism was inconceivable to society of the day. And when it was learned that Rae had been unable to verify the facts for himself and had instead trusted the word of an Inuit, well, society simply closed ranks upon him. Franklin's widow refused to accept Rae's findings and mounted a sustained attack on him. It became a cause célèbre, and society sided with the Franklins. And this is the result. Statues both here and in Westminster Abbey. And look, he's given credit for discovering the Northwest Passage. It's a travesty, erected by the unanimous vote of Parliament. Frankly, what did they know about the North? Rae was our true champion of the North. He'd learned to live there as though it was his home. Not only did he get no public recognition for his achievements, but society literally left him out in the cold. He's been all but forgotten for the past 100 years. Rae does not deserve to be brushed aside. His achievements were astounding. He undertook 4 Arctic expeditions with the loss of just 1 life. He mapped around 1,500 miles of coastline. He found the Franklin expedition, and he discovered the Rae Strait, the final link in the Northwest Passage. That's why it bears his name. But that still leaves his greatest contribution to exploration. If you want to come and travel in this landscape today, just about every book you read will tell you how the local people, the Inuit, have coped with these conditions for thousands of years. John Rae knew that. When he came here, he learned everything he could about traveling in this incredibly hostile environment from the people who knew how. And yet, he was vilified for it. I find it astonishing that a man of such wisdom could be treated so shabbily by the establishment. Next, my journey takes me in the steps of a woodsman who mapped some 3 million square miles of this magnificent land.
If you love the Springwatch Live cameras, and who doesn't, Chris and Michaela will be showing you the latest images from 8 tonight. Halloween, celebrated with a somewhat sadistic game on the Edwardian farm next.